we are live on the Frugal Crafters YouTube channel. I'm Lindsay, the Frugal Crafter, and with me tonight is my husband, Jason.
Good evening.
And he will be taking your questions and relaying them to me. We are going to look at the vast amount of watercolor palettes that I own. It's a little embarrassing. It's a lot.
What do you got, 4 or 5? What is it?
A few more. I've not counted. I don't know. This is a follow-up to the fast-paced, exciting brush tour that we did a couple weeks ago. So if you have any questions as we go along, just type the word question in all caps in the chat on YouTube, and Jason will relay it to me, or if it's something the moderators can help you with, they will help you. We'll be looking at a lot of different palettes, and we'll also be going through my swatch book too, so you can see how the colors look painted out. And if you're curious about how different brands compare to one another, I'll let you know that, and I'll also tell you why I use some more than others, and go into all that stuff. So I think that's about it.
You want to try to keep the questions on palettes and
yes, let's keep the questions
paints
to
as
watercolor,
much as possible.
Yes, watercolor paints and palettes for the questions today. So it'll be super helpful for people coming back and trying to get this information in the replay. So I'm going to start with my oldest palette. I had one previous to this. It was a large palette that I had from when I was 7 to when I was just out of college, but that was a very thin plastic palette, and eventually they get brittle and they crack, and I'd used up the paints in that. So the next palette that came into my possession was this John Pike palette, and you can see how the plastic ones do get yellowed over time. And I'm honestly not sure how old this palette is, because it was given to me. I was an art director at a senior center, and one of the members dropped off a bunch of supplies. Her mother passed away, and she wasn't a painter, but she knew that I taught classes there, and she asked if I could use this. And so some of this paint is what was in it originally. Some I've added too, but this is such a wonderful palette, and I used this for quite a few years, pretty much exclusively, and this usually stays in my wooden box, travel box, because it fits really well. So there's a mishmash of colors in here. But that is a John Pike palette. I do recommend these palettes if you want a plastic palette, because it's super rugged. And I mean, this thing was, I got this in the 90s, and it was probably 20 years old when I got it. So it just doesn't get brittle. It does yellow, but it doesn't get brittle and crack or anything. The next palette that I'm going to show you is my Jones palette. This is kind of the thinner plastic that does get kind of brittle with age. It's got a little crack there. It's held up pretty well though. I got this in probably the late 90s, and I recently went through and labeled the outside of the palette with the colors, just so I would have that for when I was like teaching a YouTube tutorial. Otherwise, I mean, I mix by eye, but if you need to know the actual color. And I swatch these out, like kind of as if you're going around the palette like that in my swatch book here. M. Graham was the first professional watercolor paints I ever bought, and they're wonderful paints. I don't use this palette too often in tutorials because it is so large that that I can't fit the palette on screen with my painting. So if you want to see mixing color and stuff, I can't show it. So that's why I don't use this in tutorials. And it's a little too big for my upstairs table where I paint sometime as well. Any questions on?
Someone has asked if you think you'll use all these paints up in your lifetime.
At the rate I acquire, possibly not. So there may be some young art director that is blessed with my my abundance someday. If I stopped acquiring, probably, but it's so hard. Yeah, I've thought that question so many times too, myself. So I'm gonna go through my swatch book, I think, and show you the palettes and their swatches. This is my Sommelier Swatch. I got this a couple of years ago. Get that palette out. This I took to the Bahamas with us, and I've taken this several times out painting on the coast, so there is some sand in some of my paints. I really like this this palette of colors. So what I got here was, I got the set of 12 plus 6 free half pans, and that was a promotion. I think they still have. I picked it up at, Jerry's Artorama, and then I added a few other colors into it to round it out. But I really like the Sommelier paints because they layer really well. So I swatched them out in a wash. I did a layer, and then I did another layer. So you can see 3 glazes here, and the probably the best thing about Sennelier's paints is that they glaze really well, and it's almost impossible to overwork something with their paints because they're so translucent and they glaze so well. And they also come with this little overlay, which is kind of useless because it sticks to your paint and is in the way, so I just stuck it in my swatch binder. So I try to swatch out, if I get a new set of paints, I try to swatch it out so that I can refer back to it. I don't do this if I'm just getting a single tube, but when I get a new set, that's one of the ways I kind of determine and get used to it. The quality of it is just by swatching it out. The next swatch I have here is my Turner paints, and this was the set of 18, which is always a really good deal at Jerry's Artorama. I originally had that in a Zoltan Szabo palette, which I can actually show you this here. But I used up a lot of those colors, and then what I ended up doing was I had these Yarka student grade paints that I got probably back in the 90s that I really liked, but they dried in their tubes. So I cut the tubes off and I just ended up putting the paints in here. So this is kind of a mishmash of student grade paint and just the dregs of the Turner paints, but I wanted to show you what I ended up doing with this palette because I used to use it a lot in tutorials. But what I ended up doing was I got a new set of Turner colors, and let's find them here. And I ended up putting them in half pans because now I am putting my colors in a half and full pans, because then I can move them around and I can use different brands together and just bring them out to the palette where I'm mixing. And to me, that's a lot more useful. So these are all Turners here. These are some Rembrandts, and those are some Da Vinci, and the Da Vinci paints are also the same as the American Journey. Da Vinci private labels paints for different brands, and that's one of the brands they private label for. Was there a question?
Kathy's asking about the pros and cons of pans versus tube paints.
Well, it's personal preference. Neither is better or worse, but I tend to buy in tubes and then I squeeze them into half pans or full pans. So a half pan is half the size of a full pan, so that's why they call it half and full. I like it because you can move them around to different palettes. So if you're going painting for the day and you're going on vacation and you're like, well, I don't really need cobalt turquoise, I'd rather have something else, you could take the pan out and you could put a different one in. So that would be the advantage. And then you don't have to have so many palettes around. You could just have them kind of stored somewhere and move them around as you need. But tubes are much more popular in this country. So what I do for storing my tubes, and I'll show you this right off the bat, is I have those plastic drawers. What are you laughing at?
I thought we had all the watercolors out already.
Oh, I have nooks and crannies all over this place. Like Mary Poppins, I'm pulling out drawers of pans. So what I did was I went through all of my watercolors a few months ago and I sorted them. And I'm going to bring up another. Jeez. So I have them divided up by, I have all my yellows here. I have my warm reds, my cool reds, my warm blues, my cool blues, my browns and yellow ochres, my greens, my violets, and my metallics. So, and then I have loose half and full pans there. So when I get a new tube and I want to add color to it to put in my storage tin, then I have them right there. So by having them organized like this, if I know I need ultramarine blue, I'm going to find my ultramarine blue tubes in here. What was that look?
I can see all the stuff you haven't put on camera yet.
And these are just those little bins. You can get these at the dollar store, like in packs of 4 for $1, and they're great for dividing these drawers. And these are just the Sterilite drawers. And when you're buying storage drawers like that, look for ones where you can take the whole drawers out so that you can, get access to your supplies better and move your supplies around. All right.
We had a question about cleaning the pallets if they've got stains on them.
Magic eraser works pretty good for getting the stains off. Sometimes they just stain, but usually dish soap and a magic eraser will do the trick. Now this is my Lucas swatch, and that is, I got the set of 48 colors a couple of years ago. There was a great sale at Jerry's Artorama. It was $114. It's up to like $200 now, I think. So you just kind of keep your eyes out. If there's a paint that you're interested in, I just keep your eyes out for it and look on Amazon, look at Jerry's, look at Blick, and kind of see. But Blick is, Jerry's is I think the U.S. distributor for Lucas, so they generally have the lowest price. And sometimes they're the only place you can get them. But I did a little swatch in here, which is handy, so you can kind of see how everything lays out. And I also have them swatched out in here, and I tried to remember to put a black line down before I swatched them out so I could see how transparent they are. These are pretty transparent, but they're not as transparent as Sommelier or some of the other more well-known brands, but they do have a lovely subtlety to them, and they're a nice paint. They remind me an awful lot of the new paints that I just got, the Renaissance, I think that's how you pronounce them. They're a Polish watercolor, and I just was sent those from this Etsy shop, a little creative, I'm sorry, and I just actually made a swatch for this book because I didn't have it in here today. But these colors and these colors came in the set of 24, and then I added those individually. But these are nice and bright and lovely. They're not as transparent as some other brands, but they are nice to work with, and they're very pigmented. And these, I guess, are a semi-handmade. Most of the process, I guess, is handmade for these paints. And I really don't have any other handmade paints to compare it to. But they reminded me a lot of the Lucas watercolors. The more I use them, the more I realize that. So I wanted to show you those next to each other just so that I'd have that base of reference. The Renaissance paints from Poland are very affordable. They're like $3.50 a pan, and the set of 24 I think is $55 with the palette. So it's a great option if you're looking to get started in watercolor and you want a professional grade, but you don't have a super huge budget, since, you know, a set of 24 colors can go for hundreds of dollars. Was there any questions?
Let me see. Well, somebody's asking about a magic eraser. I don't know the name. I'm sorry, I can't read it. But it says I don't have magic erasers in my country. So if they're like that abrasive.
Yeah,
square.
Yeah, I'm wondering what else. I bet actually I've heard even using a regular eraser can help get the stains out. But I would try a dish rag with whatever dish soap that you have available. And see what you can get off that way. You could try something like a Comet or an Ajax, but I would just worry about scratching the enamel. You could take the paints out. Most of these palettes have an insert that will come out, and you could bleach it. But just be careful, because you don't really want to corrode the metal, because you don't want it to rust, obviously. But if you were to maybe just take a paper towel with some water and bleach and go over the stained areas if they bother you. As you can see, they don't really bother me too badly. I just leave them, but that's something to use. There's probably some name for that. The material those magic erasers are made out of, I just don't know what it is.
Ian says high density foam.
High density
foam. That makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that's what it's called. Maybe they can find it.
Yeah, maybe so.
These are Holbein. They're another lovely brand of watercolors. I got this set. It was in tubes, and I think it was a set of 18, and it was like $30 on Amazon a few years ago. So Amazon usually has good prices on the sets of Holbein. Generally, Amazon has great prices on sets, but their individual tubes are really high. So you want to go to a place like Jerry's Adorama, Blick, or Cheap Joe's to buy individual tubes, because they'll be like half the price. It's crazy. But sets, you can't really beat Amazon prices. And I put them in this palette here. This palette had half pans that you could take out, but I just took the half pans out and I filled the indents with the paint, and then I used the half pans for something else. So that's something you can do too with one of these molded plastic palettes. If it's not the metal ones, you can just fill in the wells there. I like these paints a lot. They're nice and vibrant. They're more of an Eastern style watercolor, but they're very transparent and vibrant for an Eastern style watercolor. And when I say Eastern style, they're usually paints made in Japan, Korea, or China, and they tend to be made for more porous papers like rice paper, and not like your Western watercolor paper. Okay, now this is the Mission Gold set, and I actually have a couple Mission Gold sets. Find it here. So for this one, I actually took a plastic palette and I cut it down and stuck it in one of these core tins, because when the core paints first came out, they would have 6 tiny little tubes, and they would come in this big tin. And I really loved the tins because they had all these divots for mixing. And I just took a hot knife, it's kind of like a wood burner, with a knife attachment, and I cut down this little Dr. P.H. Martin plastic palette and shoved it in here, and that's a great palette for these. These are this is a 24 pure pigment set, so each of these colors is a single pigment. And it actually comes with 2 bonus colors. It comes with a white and a black, but there's 24 other than that, so there's 26 colors total. And that was those are really nice, really transparent. If you want a really bright color palette that you can, you know, mix to get duller colors, it's a great option. And this was a swatch on handmade paper here, and this is a swatch on the paper I always swatch on, which is a student grade Fabriano Studio paper, which I feel like gives me a good swatch. The swatches are what I would expect on a professional paper, so I like to do that. And then the other Mission Gold set I have was sent to me by the company that I bought that from, the pure pigment set I bought on Amazon from the company Crush On. They sent me this one as a thank you, because I mentioned it, and I guess they got a bunch of sales for that. And this is interesting because their half pans are bigger than typical half pans, and you can buy replacements. I'm just trying to see if I can. I don't think I can. I probably have got it glued in there with paint. I can't seem to get the pans out right here on canvas, on camera. But this is a really nice palette. This doesn't seem to stain. This is the bulletproof material. They call it bulletproof glass from Mission Gold. They make bigger palettes out of this material, so if you are having an issue with staining, give that a try, because their paints do stain, but on this material they seem to do really well. It does bead up a little bit more, but you know, if staining is more of your issue than your color beading up, then that's a good option. And I just made a little mini swatch to go in here, because you can't really tell what the colors are otherwise. So I recommend doing that no matter what you have for paints. Just make a little palette swatch so that you can see what you have. Any questions so far? Any more?
What's the art mat you use? The one on your table?
I don't have anything on this table. I've spray painted it white, but I like the white Jade Davenport. And, it's called the Splat Mat, and your stuff can't slide around on it. I have that on my table upstairs, and it's got a really cute design on one side, and the back side is just flat, kind of a cream color. So that's what I would recommend, and you can get that at Michael's or at janedavenport.com. I also want to show you, if your staining is a big issue, I really love ceramic palettes because they don't stain. Or you can use just a white ceramic plate from the dollar store. It works just as well. But those you can clean, they mix really well. Your paint won't bead up. You can see your colors are really good, and it's cheap. So I would recommend those if you're having issues with beading. Okay, that's some M. Graham gouache. We're not going to get into gouache today. We got enough to deal with transparent watercolors. The next one I have is Winsor & Newton Artist Watercolors. They're probably the most well-known watercolors. I have to say though, they're nice, but they're not my favorite. They don't knock my socks off. A lot of people swear by Winsor & Newton, and I think it's because they were the first and the original watercolors, but they're fine. They're just not. I think if they're costing more than the other brands that I'm showing you, then it's not. I thought I cleaned my palettes after I used them all the time, but I'm like, all these palettes are filthy. But this is a set of 24. Again, I found this on Amazon. I think it was about $87, so it was a great deal. This palette on your bigger, like your big kind of art suppliers they're gonna start at like $150 to $200. So that's what I said about the sets being cheaper on Amazon, and the individual tubes are way cheaper on like the independent art sites. But you know, it's definitely a tried and true brand. The colors are nice. I'll just pull this out just so you can see. And something I began doing after a viewer gave me a really great tip. It was Afke. And I know I'm afraid I can't pronounce her last name properly, so I'm not going to try. She said she saves the little wrappers and sticks them down and swatches next to them. And I thought that's a brilliant idea, because that way you don't have to copy down the pigment information and pigment numbers or actually reorder numbers. So I started doing that as soon as she gave me that tip. So I would thank her for that, and wanted to share it with you guys. But it's a great way to stay organized. So that is the Winsor & Newton Professional. And I do have a lot of the student grade versions of these paints, and we'll get to those after we get through the professionals. So these are the core watercolors. They're probably right up there in my favorites. because they're fairly new to the game. Watercolor. They are very transparent. Probably some of the most transparent watercolors that I know of. They are gorgeous. They're very adhesive, and a tiny little drop will go a long, long way. I had a palette where I just put a tiny little drop when I first got my first 18 colors, and it took me so long to use it up, and I still have little bits of paint on that palette because I haven't been able to use it up yet. So these are great for your travel palettes when you want to fill up a palette but you are going to be gone for a while and you want to make sure your paint lasts. A little goes a long way with this. So I put mine in half pans now, and I just keep them in this tin, and when I'm going to paint with them, I would just bring over the colors I want to this side of the tin and paint with them, and then I would put them back in. And I also, with these half pans and full pans, I write down the brand name, the color name, and the pigment number, just so, you know, I can have that if anyone asks me when I'm teaching. You know, whether you need to do that or not, it's up to you. It's nice to know. It's nice to have that repetition to know what pigments or what colors. So that way, if someone says use yellow ochre, and you know that's pigment yellow 42, and you have a raw sienna that's a pigment yellow 42, you know you can just grab that and it's going to be close enough. So let's see. And this is the first 18 colors that I had that came in the intro sets, and so I had already swatched that out, but then I did a complete swatch after I got the other colors that I added to my collection. The next brand is a bargain. It's a great buy. It's the White Knights paints by and speaking of names I can't pronounce, I'm not even gonna attempt that one. It's a Russian name, but they sell under the trade names White Knights and Yarka. And I got a Yarka set back in the late 90s, and I really enjoyed it. Actually, I got a tiny little trial set and I liked it. So then I got a set of 24 and I really liked it, and those were under the Yarka name. And then I got this set of 24 here after doing some work for doing a review on another paint that the company made. They sent me the another set. So these are available individually or in sets. There's a shop on Etsy called Pro Art Supplies who sent me this set here, and they sell their full pans for $3.50. And then they have the sets, and I can't remember how much the sets of 24 and 36 are, but I believe this is probably the same set. This White Knights here is probably the same set as the old Yarka. It's the same paint. It's just branded differently for different markets. It was branded Yarka for the United States, White Knights for Europe, and I can't pronounce the Russian trade name of it, but I just put all my random pans in here because I had a few individually obtained ones and then some leftovers for some other sets. So Yarka and White Knights, same thing, different name. Any questions? Yep.
No, not really. I'm trying to not repeat or anything like that, or talk about things that I know you've covered a lot in many other videos. But
oh yeah. I don't know what we have for moderators in either.
I've seen Valerie and Grace and Joe and all kinds.
Oh, great. This is what I have for Schminky Horadam watercolors. They are among people's favorites. They're very bright and robust colors. They are German. They're a little harder to get in the United States. They're more popular in Europe. And the company actually sent me a set of just 12 colors in tubes individually, and I swatched them out here. But they're lovely. I don't really have that much experience with them, and I just took my my half pans that I poured and stuck them in this tin by Meeden, and then I just swatched it out so I could know what I had there. But I have a few just random colors from different companies in here. But I don't feel like I've ever had enough of the Schminka colors to do like a real comprehensive review, but the colors are bright, they mix well, they're lovely paints. This palette here, you can get this on Amazon by the company Meeden, and you can get it empty or with half or full pans in it, and it's very affordable. I think empty it's like $12. I think I paid $12. It might be up to like 13 or 14 now, but it's a good option if you want a metal palette, but you want to get one on the cheap. I don't think it's quite as good a quality as some of the ones that the name brand ones, but it's definitely not bad. Okay. And next, oh, I really like this brand. This is Rembrandt, and I did show you a swatch. I had a few random tube paints, but this is their 48 half pan set, and I grabbed this when it went on sale for like $134 on Amazon, and generally the set retails for about $517, I think. I saw it in the, I think the Blick catalog, and the list price was over $500. These are wonderful. They're vibrant. They glaze well. The pans are very amply filled, and I really like this brand. So that's Rembrandt, and I believe that's the artist grade to the Van Gogh line.
A question about how you organize. Do you select color for your palettes by brand, by application, like floral or landscape, or by preference of specific colors?
Well, it depends. I used to just have all my paints in one palette, and I just went around in like a color wheel formation, and that's probably the best way to do it. But I will usually grab a palette by like I'll figure out what I want to paint, and then I'll grab a palette that I think would do a good job at meeting all my color needs. Like if I'm going out for a day of painting out on the coast, I would bring my Sommelier palette, or my Prima Decadent Pies palette, or my Portable Painter, which I'll show you in a minute, which has different colors that I've selected because they're really good for all occasion and landscape colors. So and sometimes I just haven't used a palette for a while, so I feel like grabbing it and playing with it. Good question. And this is the Kusakabe Watercolors. This is a company that also makes the Aqua hybrid paint, and I really like the Aqua paint. Their watercolors they're okay, but they're not my favorite. They were in this paint palette, but then I put gouache in here, and then I dropped it, and the gouache all popped out, and so that's kind of a palette that needs some work, but there's a swatch for those if you're curious. The portable palette, actually these next couple of palettes I'm going to show you are kind of mishmashes. So I bought the palette and I put different colors in. So this is probably more colors than you would need for plein air painting, but it is really lightweight and handy, and it's got a thumb hole if you want to carry it. So this would be a situation where I just put the colors in that I think I would need for a particular outing, or for, you know, maybe a season of painting if you're going on a trip or whatnot. And recently, for the past year or so, I've been using this. And the colors I use in here are so that I can paint pretty much anything I'm going to encounter. So I have a warm and a cool version of my red, blue, and yellow. And then I have sap green, green gold. So I'm going to replace the sap green with hooker's green, because if I have green gold, I really don't need the sap green, but I was using it up. Cobalt teal, which needs to be replaced. Dioxazine violet, which is really great for really dark shadows. Burnt sienna, or you could use a burnt umber or transparent brown, and yellow ochre. So those are nice all-around colors that I like to put in. And I think I have some Daniel Smith and some Core and maybe one Rembrandt color. It's a hodgepodge, but it's a good mix.
Cassie just got here and she wants to know how many palettes of watercolors you have, and that's what we're here to find out tonight. More than you'd think.
Is it more than you thought, honey?
No, nothing surprises me anymore.
This palette's by Pro Art. It's a nice sturdy one. I'll show you some. There's a very similar one you can get if you have an Ocean State job lot in your area. They make a very similar palette, but it's just smaller, and it's like $2. And it's great for gouache or ink or what have you. Those are if you just want to have like maybe a palette for each different brand, and you don't want to spend a lot of money or have a really big setup. Those are really good for that.
Here's a question. I tried to squeeze tube watercolor and make pans, but they crumble all to pieces.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Well, they're probably a student grade paint. Often the student grade paints will, they don't have the humectant in them, which is a substance that helps retain moisture, and it can either be glycerin or honey or a combination of the two. So if you know your paint's doing that, squeeze some fresh paint in, add a couple drops of honey or glycerin. I prefer glycerin. Stir it up with a toothpick, and when it dries, it won't dry completely. It'll stay in that semi-moist state, and then it won't run on you. So, I mean, it won't crack and fall out. So it just needs that gooey moisture in it. Okay, Daniel Smith. So I did show you the Daniel Smith, I only have the 6 colors of Daniel Smith and a couple sticks, and they were in that Meaden tin that I showed you, and then I had some in that portable painter. And this is just a swatch of some of my Dr. P.H. Martin Hydrus colors. I don't really want to get into liquid watercolors tonight because I honestly don't use them very much. So I don't feel like I'm a very competent source of that. I've got paint on myself somehow. This is the Ganzai Tambay set, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. It's a Korean, is it Korean? I think it's Korean watercolor. And the reason I don't use these very often is because the palette they come in is kind of cumbersome. There's no mixing area. So this is the palette. It's in a cardboard box, and I love these huge pans, but you need to have a palette to mix on, so a glass plate or something that you can mix onto. But the paints are nice. They're a little more opaque, I'd say. If you put on too thickly, you get kind of like a sheen on top of your paper. This is definitely your quintessential Eastern palette that is meant for less porous paper, or more porous papers rather. Oh my gosh, I can't get my thoughts out. So if like you're a card maker and you're working on cardstock, these are great. I think that's why these got really popular among card makers, is because you could use them on less sized paper and lower quality watercolor paper and still have a paint that's usable and workable and looks nice. So and I love the size of these pans, and you can buy just the pans, so you can refill, or you could buy these and put a magnet on the bottom like I do with my tins and stick them in there. But these are the Ganzai Tambay paints that I wish they just had. I wish this was like, I don't know, I wish that there was a better mixing solution here, because I don't tend to use them because they're a pain. I have to get out a whole other thing just to mix on them, and I'm pretty lazy. So that's what they look like swatched out. This swatch was hanging on my wall for a while. Even though I don't have windows down here, I have a lot of lights, and I think it faded a little bit. So and I just haven't been bothered to do a new swatch. You can see how much brighter the colors are on the swatch. It was inside the box though. So, and that was also a little thicker, but you can see how they probably faded in the light, which isn't really a great point for watercolors. They shouldn't fade that much, but there you are. And those are my Da Vinci watercolors. They're the same as the American Journey. They were in one of the tins I showed you already.
Someone's asking about that ceramic or that plate you have with the dividers.
Yes.
And if you know where you could find something like that.
Well, I'll tell you where I got it.
Is that what it was for?
Yes.
Originally?
Yep,
okay.
It is a watercolor palette. I got this at Cheap Joe's Art Stuff. I think I paid around $7 for it. They were having a sale last year with Arches watercolor paper, and I got my travel brushes at the same time. I had one a little bit smaller that I got at Consumer Crafts for about $3, and I really liked it, but I wished it was bigger, and so when I saw this, I grabbed it. And then I also got this teeny tiny one at one of the big box craft stores, and it's great for holding paint. It's not really wonderful for mixing. Just having this extra space makes a big difference, having the wells a little bit bigger. So if you can't find it at Cheap Joe's, I know you can find those on Amazon, but often those are one of those products that are more expensive on Amazon, I think, because it has to be shipped and things break and they probably lose a lot. Oh, and one more thing I want to show you before we go on to the student grade paints are the Watercolor Sheets, which I do not have swatched here, I don't think. But there's Peerless, which another Etsy seller. I got this little booklet here from another Etsy seller. It's just like tiny little bits of the sheets cut off and put in this booklet. And there's the Vive watercolor sheets. They're basically like a dye on like a fabric, and you would just wet a brush to it and you would pick up the color and bring it over to your project. They're super compact and portable. They're a lot of fun to use. I prefer pans or dried down tube colors myself, but they're definitely a great option if you want super, super transparent color that is very portable. All right, so any questions on the artist grade colors we've gone through? No?
Specifically, I don't know. I can't keep track here.
You can always leave them in the comments if we miss your question, or if you stump a moderator or whatnot. This is the Aquafine paints from Daler & Rowney. These are generally not in my supplies I use that often because I keep them all together with my teaching supplies. So if I'm teaching like at a convention, this is what I use. This is a set of 24 colors, and it has a water brush, has a little size 4 round right in it, and then I bring whatever other brushes I need for my students. But this is a really solid a really solid paint set for a beginner. And this is they have different amounts of colors in a set. This is a swatch of the 24 set I teach with. This is some random tube set. I don't like their tubes as much as I like the pans. For whatever reason, the pans seem better. And this is the 18 set, and those are available on Amazon. I think this set is like $25 on Amazon. I got this a year ago. I got a bunch of these for $10 a piece, so that's why I bought them for my students, because it was such a great deal and it was cheaper than refilling the little plastic palettes I had been using previously. But that's a great set to get started with if you're looking for something inexpensive and compact. Aquafine by Daler Rowney. These are the Sonnet Watercolors, so I'm just gonna grab my other bin. I should have gone through this and actually put all of these in order, but it's not that big of a bin. It's like, what, like a shoebox?
Well, that one, yeah. But how many are there?
So these are from that same company that I was telling you that makes the Russian and the White Knights. That I can't pronounce her name. I don't even see it written out here. Naviskaya Paltria. Ugh. I don't even. Do you want to try?
It sounds good.
Up there in the corner.
My very best Russian. Yeah, Nevskaya Palitra.
Sounds good.
I don't know what else it would be.
And these are wonderful paints. They are. They actually do have the pigment information online. And this came from the Pro Art Shop Etsy shop. I think otherwise these are kind of difficult to find in the United States. They're packaged in a cardboard box, which I don't love because it's, again, you have to have a whole other thing to mix them with. But these are full pans that will fit in in like any of your tins, or you can put a magnet on the bottom and put them in just a regular old tin, or use some poster putty and stick them on a ceramic plate, which I do quite a bit. But these are great. They're super vibrant and transparent. They're almost inky, but they do use your tried and true colors. Some pigments are a little dodgy, like pigment yellow 1's a little dodgy. So some of them are not going to be the most light fast. Like I squared around the ones that were really dodgy, but most of the colors were okay as far as light fastness, and I like that they offer that pigment information. This set's only about $20, I think, from Pro Art Supplies. So if you're looking for a super vibrant set of colors that will last you a long time, that will go a long way, it's a great set. I like how vibrant they are. You're not going to sacrifice the quality of working with a professional paint. It may fade quicker if you use some of those fugitive colors, but you'll get the experience of painting with a really nice paint. So I really recommend them.
Someone's asking about the name of a watercolor that is like Peerless, that began with a V.
Vive.
Vive?
Yeah, right.
How do you spell it?
I'll show you. Viviva.
Yep. All right. I see somebody covered that already anyway. So thank you. But there.
Yeah, those are nice. Those folks are nice. I've worked with that company. They sent me some stuff to review, and just seem like nice people. One of my favorite student grade watercolors are the Van Gogh watercolors, and they are swatched right here. I'll just take those out so you can see. Sometimes the plastic glares while I hunt through and figure out where I put those. Actually, you know what? I think I just squeezed those on a plate as I use them. So I think I have a random plate over in the corner that's got those on there. But those worked really well. They are the student grade version of the Rembrandts. And they're definitely in my top probably 3 or 4 student grade watercolor sets to get. So that's Van Gogh by Royal Talons, I believe. And they have a lot of single pigment colors, so I wouldn't buy every color they have. I would just go get like your basics, kind of like what I have here, your 2 primaries, 2 versions of each primary, a warm and a cool, and then maybe a yellow, ochre, and sap green. Don't get the burnt sienna, it's very strange, but the other colors are pretty legit. Another set that I really recommend for student grade would be Sennelier's Le Petit Aquarelle watercolors. They are they're a little more expensive than they were when I got them because I think they got a little more popular. But this is what the palette looks like. There's a nice strap there for holding it when you're out painting. I really like that. I like the thickness and the durability of the palette. But the thing I really liked about these paints was that when you put them side by side with the professional Sennelier paints, they don't miss a beat. They are so similar. I don't know if I'd be able to tell the difference if I didn't like see them in the palette. So if this is, again, if you're considering the Sommelier line, but it's out of your budget, get the Le Petit Aquarelle set, and you'll know whether you like Sommelier paint or not by painting with this. So this, I think I paid around $27 for, and if you were getting 24 of the regular Sommeliers, it would be about $200 probably. So it's a great way to try this brand out, and it makes sense that a company's student grade line would be very similar to their artist grade, because it's kind of the gateway drug. It gets you in, see if you like the paints, and then you go and you splurge on the expensive stuff. So that's definitely a good one if you're looking for a high quality student grade. And another one of my favorites, and probably my favorite because I've used them for so long, is the Cotman Line. I actually have a couple palettes of theirs. I teach classes at the local library, and I use a set of 12 Cotman for that, the Sketcher box, which I highly recommend. It's about $12 on Amazon, not very much at all. Then I got this one in probably the mid-90s. It was a gift from my mother. This is the Cotman set of 24 full pans. Is room for a brush. I like that the palette really hasn't yellowed over time. I mean, it's got some paint stains on it and whatnot, but it's really held up pretty well, nice and durable. This is a student grade paints from Windsor and Newton, and I've been very pleased with them. And you can also get this in tubes if you prefer to work with a tube paint, and I have refilled some of the colors, but very solid choice. And on Amazon, I got this, yikes, last year. And this is a set of 45 half pans, and they give you doubles of alizarin crimson, permanent, ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, I think burnt sienna, and maybe white. I can't remember. There's like 5 colors they give you 2 of, but this is the half pan version. I like the full pan version better because there's a lot of colors that you probably necessarily wouldn't use. But again, it's a great. It's similar to the Windsor Newton professional line, not as strong, but it does have some similar qualities. But it's just a very reliable, easy to find paint no matter where you are in the world. You can seem to get Windsor Newton products, so that's a good buy. This was under $50 like last year, so both of these would be the same price because you're getting about the same amount of paint. It's just you're getting fewer colors in bigger boxes versus more colors in smaller boxes.
You got almost 400 people watching here.
Wow, that's so awesome.
What's the most fade-resistant paint you've used?
Oh, gosh. Really, it depends on what color it is because across any brand, some colors are going to fade more than other colors. So you want to look at light fastness. Pretty much any of the professional paints are going to list their light fastness, and they're going to be pretty much on par with one another. So as long as you're in the professional range, you shouldn't have a problem. If you get Opera, it doesn't matter what company you buy Opera from, it's going to fade. If you get some of the violets, it doesn't matter what company you get them from or how much you spend, it's going to fade. But like burnt sienna, you can buy the cheapest burnt sienna in the world and it's going to be fine, even from one of the student grade companies. So as long as you're sticking with a reputable professional grade paint, you shouldn't have a fading problem. And every tube will tell you its light fastness rating. I'll just grab a tube here. Like this one says light fastness 2 very good. So this is PV19 alizarin crimson by Da Vinci. So like if you had cadmium red, for instance, that would be light fastness 1 excellent. So it just and you want to read, because companies can go on different scales. It can be the ASTM scale or the blue wool scale. So just make sure you know what scale you're reading for and whether it's good or bad. Something I usually do is look for what the yellow ochre or the burnt sienna in that line says. If they have that, if that has a 5-star, then I know the 5-star is good. If that's got a 1-star, I know the 1-star is good because those colors are just very, very stable.
As someone who's been on the hunt for a huge ceramic palette, any recommendations where to look? I don't know what huge means, but
I know there's a big one by Stephen Quiller, and I think you can find that at Jerry's Artorama or Cheap Joe's or Blick. It's a big rectangular one, but it's got a circle on the inside so you can set up your colors like a color wheel. And I think there might be a ceramic Pike palette as well, but you need to get that from one of the big box art stores and expect to pay around $60 for them. They're not cheap. you might be able to find like I was seeing around Easter time those white ceramic egg dishes that might be a good option. But look around. They're not cheap. I think probably because a lot of them break in shipping, so they have to replace them.
Oh no.
Yeah. Okay. The next one is super fun. These are the Jane Davenport palettes, and I think these are fun. I love the color of the tins. I think Jane is very inspirational. And her paints they're fun. They're bright. They are gorgeous colors. She has a very unique way of laying her colors out. So she's got the Brights palette. This is one of her first palettes that came out, and her palettes are called Paint Till You Faint, which I think is just adorable. So this is her bright colors, and you'll notice that all of these colors are cool colors. They're all like cool versions of your primaries and just in cool colors. So then her neutral palette is actually warm colors. So I would recommend that if you are going to go with her line, you get both the neutral and the brights, because mixing them together you will get some good colors. She does give pigment information on her blog. Some of her colors are a little fugitive. They're meant for art journaling. They're meant for sketchbook work. So the work would be closed in a sketchbook, so fading you wouldn't really have the fading. That happens when it's in the sunlight. So that's just something to be aware of. And she recently came out with the Sea Glitz palette, which is what?
I'm making fun of how you talk.
You're making fun of the way I talk?
Not me.
Who's making fun of the way I talk?
People. Lots of people.
Lots of people are making fun of
the way you say. The way you say, ROOM.
Room?
Yeah, room.
We need some room after this live stream.
So some people say room. You say room. And drawing.
Drawing.
Yeah.
How do you say drawing?
You say drawing.
Drawing?
Drawing. I don't think of it, and then somebody points it out and has a giggle, and I'm like, oh yeah, she does say that.
I know a lot of people say that, but I think drawing. Drawing.
Yeah, you got an R in the middle of drawing.
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 It's like mittens. Mittens. People don't say their T's. I just add an R. That's the main thing, adding an R where it doesn't belong.
Right. Take it off the end and put it somewhere else. Oh.
Okay, and this is I'm gonna cough.
No, they're not making fun, I know. We're having fun. You do say rum. You go in the other rum.
I said, you to the other rum. Go give me some rum. And this is a Sea Glitz palette, which is also the new Jane Davenport palette. And what I do sometimes, if I have those duplicate colors, like I said, the Cotman set came with some duplicates, I actually stick them into palettes that I feel are lacking in a certain color family, and I kind of flesh them out that way. And I did that with this because there's so many greens, but I felt like it needed some other colors to balance it out. So, this would not be my first choice. I would definitely, if you want to get the Jane Davenport paints, this would be definitely a third choice. These two are much more useful, just because of the color variety. But I do like how she gives pigment information, because a lot of student grade paints do not. Another similar paint that's come out kind of for the mixed media craft market is the Prima Color Confections. And I don't have them all. They've come out with a few new ones this year or last year, but I do have quite a few. I got 5 of them, I guess. And so they're different. What are you laughing at?
Just the pile.
The Jenga pile of pallets over here. We can have a big crash.
She's taking them out of containers and just piling them up now.
I know, isn't it? They were so tidy in those 2 bins, and now they've expanded.
We'll never get them back the same way.
I don't know. I was hoping that I could pack those into those bins and be able to fit the lids on when we're done, but I don't know.
We have more totes around.
Yeah, I might need a new tote. So with the Prima sets, they go, this is the person that asked the question at the beginning of the live stream about, do you choose a palette based on what you're going to paint, or do you select individual colors? Their palettes are arranged so that you kind of would paint different things. So Tropicals is probably the most useful mixing palette. It's got a lot of your primary colors that you can mix with. The Classics have a lot of basic colors, but it's not as good for mixing as Tropicals, but that's definitely for your tropical inspired projects. The Classics are kind of like, start with this all around colors. If you don't want to mix too much, you just want the basics. It has a black and a white, which generally you don't really necessarily need in watercolor, but a lot of beginners like to have it, or mixed media artists or like scrapbookers or card makers would like to have those colors because they're not interested in mixing, which is fine. It's for a different market. Decadent Pies is great for landscapes. I take that out for landscape painting or to life drawing because you can do some beautiful skin tones with that too. Pastel Dreams is great for doing kind of whimsical florals and confectionery things, stuff like that. And then Shimmering Lights is like all these different shades of gold, which is kind of odd. So what I did was I took, like with the classics, I took out the white and black, I put in some random other pans from other sets that I had. Like I've got a few Yarkas in there that I had doubles of. I think I might have a couple Lucas Studio colors in there just to kind of fill it out so I'd have a better selection to work from. So that started off as a classics, but I've kind of hybrided it. This is Decadent Pies, which is actually wonderful gouache. So I added in my M-gram gouache in there so that I could mix colors and use it opaquely on art journal layouts. Because they're kind of too pastel for straight watercolor work. They don't kind of hold their own that way. This one is a tropical set. In the top and bottom row, you can see the colors from tropical. And then I added a few other colors down the center, some Yarkas that I had doubles of.
What was the name of the Etsy shop you mentioned earlier?
I mentioned Pro Art Supplies, where I got the White Knights, and I mentioned A Little Creative, which is where I got the Polish paints. This is Decadent Pies, a wonderful plein air type of set. That would be this one right up here. But then I added some Lucas Studio paints in the center for some more of my bright colors if I was taking this out somewhere, so I had a better variety. And this one is Shimmering Lights. This one's hardly been used by me. It's very specific. They're all just different kind of like champagne-y colors. And I think this was probably designed more for like calligraphy. People who do calligraphy who would be working on black and just want different shades of golds. I didn't find it as useful myself, but for some reason I had to have it. I actually think the company might have sent me that one. Whew! I forgot to bring a drink down here. I forgot my rum. That's not quenching. Forgot my water.
Want me to go in the other room? Get you some rum?
Might need to. This is the Shmita Academy Set. A viewer sent me this because he was from Germany and really wanted to see what I thought about these paints compared to other paints that were available. This is a set that's really hard to get in the United States, and I think it might be because Schmincke and Grumbacher were Grumbacher licensed the Schmincke products back in like the 30s, and Grumbacher has an Academy line of paint. So I think that they're very similar, and I think that it would just be kind of like undercutting themselves if they crossed markets. I don't know for sure, but that's just my feeling. But this is the Schmincke Academy tin. The colors are wonderful. This is a great beginner set, especially if you're somewhere where you can get it and not pay, a ton of money for. The person that sent it to me said that it cost him about $25, I think, in Europe. But what I really like is they give you a warm and cool of each of your primary colors, and then you get sepia, an English red, which is very similar to a burnt sienna, yellow ochre, a couple greens. You can mix some really natural greens with the yellows and the orange, the reds. It does have a black, which some people might find useful. I typically don't use black, but it's just a really great all-around set. The only thing that bothered me about this set is that it's so sharp that I almost would let my kids use it, but I'm too afraid they'll cut themselves. I've sanded it down a little bit, but it's really sharp. But color-wise, and that's probably just a fluke with this tin, I don't know. But color-wise, it's an excellent set for a beginner. And again, it's Schmincke, who makes the Horodam line, who is going to... they're going to want to make sure their student grade product is good so that you'll go on to their artist grade product as you get more experience. Okay, and this is Lucas Studio, which I showed you the Lucas professional paints. And here I just swatched them. Like this is the professional, this is a studio, that's a professional, that's a studio, just to kind of see them side by side. Very similar. The Lucas Studio is another good one to begin with. Jerry's has them, I think it's like $12 for the 12 colors. Very strong, probably stronger than Cotman, but not quite as transparent, but a really great beginner or teaching set to go with. So I recommend that to teachers that are trying to outfit a class. It's a really great buy. You can see though how they're a little opaque on this black strip. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But it's not It's not that big of a deal, but I recommend those for beginners and for teachers. And not that much difference between the professional and the student grade line. And that is my least favorite color in the world, chrome oxide green. So I never buy that color. If it happens to come in a set, that's the only reason I have that color in any brand. And here we have... Oh, this is a great one, a Grumbacher Academy. I like that a lot, just like I like the Shmita Academy. This you can find in any big box store, it seems like. By the tube, I think its retail price is $5 a tube. But you can find them at the big box stores like, or online, I mean, like Jerry's and Blick and Cheap Joe's for under $3 a tube. So they're good value. They last a long time, and I have them in this palette here. They're just a great value, and that would be another good one to learn with. They're up in my top 5 of student grade paints to grab. Okay, oh, these were those color sheets, the Vive color sheets swatched out. I guess I did swatch them, but you can see how bright and inky they are. Oh, this is a brand new one that I just bought for $19 on Amazon. This is the Meeden. This is called, it doesn't really, I keep seeing this like sold by different sellers too. It says Superior on the top. It's all over Instagram right now, and they're selling these for like $60 to $120, which is just criminal because they're $19 on Amazon. And I've been using this a lot on vacation. This is the colors. They remind me kind of the Peerless as far as the colors, but like the ultramarine blue granulates. Some of the browns have a little bit of granulation on them. They are very, very thin pans. You can kind of see how thin. I'm just going to put it there so you can see how thin that is. But I haven't hit the bottom of any of these colors. And it comes with a water brush. I thought this was a great buy. These were a lot of fun to play with, and I think especially if you like to do like calligraphy or loose florals, or stroke work, kind of decorative florals. I've been doing a lot lately. That's a great buy, and it's really nice for travel. You can see it's really small. It's only about 2 inches by 8 inches or so. So it's a fun palette.
How you doing? Are you gonna make it a two-parter here, or are you gonna?
I'm almost done.
Get through them all.
I'm almost done. Those were the pastels I swatched out. Okay.
Another question here: how many years till you run out of watercolor?
Oh, I don't know.
Have fun with you.
If there's ever a zombie apocalypse, I will be all set. We will be able to paint, honey, if there's a zombie apocalypse.
The rest of us will be bored and you'll be laughing. Bet you wish you had something to do.
These guys won't be bored because they bought all the stuff too. Have to paint party over here. The zombies will be clawing at the windows. This is another set it's not bad, but the darn palette keeps me from using it. So it is the Mozart Komorabi watercolor paint set. This is, I think, around $20 on Amazon. Full pans of color, generous. The colors are nice. The metallics are shimmery, but what I don't like is that I have to get another palette out. So if I was taking this to paint with me somewhere, I could kind of use the plastic insert, but not very well. It's hard to mix on clear. So I'd have to bring something else or laminate a piece of paper and stick it in there, but then you could have the paint sliding off the edges. So the paints are fine. I like the paints well, but it's just the fact that I need to have another palette, just like the Ganzai that keeps me from using it that often. But those metallics are really pretty. The paint's nice. The paint's inexpensive. It's a good buy. It's just I wish the palette had a mixing area, because for me that really makes me, that determines whether I'm using it or not. Even this, it just says this tiny mixing area. I can open it up and I can mix on here, and that's just, even having that is better than having nothing. You just gotta have something, some little spot to mix on. And I get 2 more regular ones, and then I get a couple specialty ones, and we will be, oh, you know what? I'll show you this. We've already looked at the Windsor Newton Professional, but I got this tiny little bijou box with some Arches paper I bought probably back in '95, and I just love this little thing. Comes with a little brush, little collapsible brush in there, and I just thought this was awesome. So I've had that for a long time. I've refilled it a few times, and I'm still down to the bottom again, but this is a great little travel thing. It fits right in your pocket. So cute. I've found that the cuteness of a palette determines whether I'll buy it or not. I think I bought a few of these things because they're so cute.
You're like that, though. You will buy things based on the container it comes in.
Yes.
Whether or not we necessarily need the object inside.
Yep. Tea boxes. Oh, some of the nastiest tea comes in the cutest little boxes.
So it's no wonder you do it with paints too.
Yeah, I like containers. This is the Koi pocket box. This is another really easy to find set. It reminds me a lot of the Prima and the Jane Davenport paints in quality. It's the pans look a little chalky, but when you paint them out, if you're painting them transparently, they're not really that chalky, but they are going to be a little more opaque than your Cotman or your Academy or any of the professional paints. But it's a good buy, not very expensive. It comes with a little water brush, and you've got plenty of area to mix with, so that kind of is a win in my book. And then I just laminated this little color chart here just so I know what the colors were called. You don't really need to do that. I'd almost rather have this as more mixing area. But what I tend to do is I'll make a little watercolor block, and I will set it up there, and then I'll have my mixing area there, and then I'll just hold it like that and paint, so I can keep my paper right in there and paint on it. So this I've taken out many a time on painting journeys, and it's worked really well. So that's another good buy, and you can get it at the big box stores with a coupon, so that's nice. And the company that sent me those other Mission Gold paints also sent me this. These are the Mission Silver class, which is a student grade version of the Mission Gold. The pans are pretty big that come in here. It's more than, I don't know, maybe double what they have in the artist quality one, but the colors are transparent. They're nice. You've got these nice mixing areas, which you can actually take out if you want to, and work on the bottom of the palette, but these are kind of nice divided wells. And you just don't see that in this country that much. And there's a little swatch of that, and that's the Mission Silver class. If you're somewhere where you can get it cheaply, then I recommend it. But it is a student grade paint, so just kind of keep that in mind. But a very good student grade paint. 2 palettes left.
Sounds like you're not the only one who likes containers here.
Yeah, I
have a container for them.
I have a lot of I have boxes of empty boxes like that after I KonMari'd. And all these spark joy, so that's why they're all still here. If you're familiar with the KonMari method, my watercolors all spark joy, except there were 2 palettes that I gave away, but that was it. But now, I have containers of containers. I have big totes of totes, and tins, because so many cute tins. Things come in cute tins, and I just save them. So I have containers of totes of tins and containers. What?
And rooms of totes.
And rooms of totes. Under the stairway is pretty much all totes.
Houses of rooms.
So this is just kind of a generic metallic palette. It's I think it's identical to the Prima one, but this was I don't know, $8 or something, if that. And then this one here is a Niji metallic watercolor set, which is really cheap. I think this is probably $4 or $6, but it works great on black paper. This I did paint on some black cardstock with that set, just so you can kind of see how cool they look on black paper. I also have the Twinkling H2Os and kind of the more posh metallic paints. But to be honest, I grab these when I need it, because all those other ones have all individual little pots, so you have to undo the cap, and then you got to paint with them, and you let them dry out, and it's just a whole ordeal. Where these, you just open them up and you go. So, and this one last thing was a palette that I made using some Inktense blocks, because the Want Monster was in full effect when the Inktense palette came out, and I just couldn't justify buying another palette. I had apparently reached my limit, and I had some scruples, and I didn't buy the Inktense palette, so instead I took some doubles of the blocks that I had, and I put them in this Lucas Studio palette, and made myself a little Inktense palette, which I've used, once since I made it. So let this be a lesson to you. What happens when you get too many palettes. They can't all be your favorites, but they can all spark joy.
Sure that's it?
Yeah, I mean, unless you want to get into the hybrid stuff like the, liquid watercolors and all that stuff, which...
Oh, wait, here's another tote.
I can show you my my hydrants. I took all my liquid watercolors because I wasn't using them, and I actually put them in these shallow Dollar Tree bins in hopes that they would, beckon me, but... Can
I address something quickly maybe you could talk about?
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of questions about, do you like this brand or that brand? And I didn't ask you those because there's a lot of those. Mm-hmm. So could you, maybe talk about how you're always saying to people, use what you have, and talk about that a little bit, because I think people are very worried about, should I get this brand or should I get this brand? There's a lot of that going on, and I didn't stop every time and ask those questions, but you have some general thoughts on that you give people. So
yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I have so many palettes here is I didn't buy all of these. Some of these came in from companies that I did some work with, or companies that sponsored videos, or I might have found a really great deal and I was curious, and since I do reviews on my channel, it makes sense to try these different paints so I can, give opinions and inform people of what's out there. But when you're looking at, like, say my first, bin of professional paints, the difference between those paints are so minuscule that you wouldn't even be able to tell the difference until you've been painting for a while and you've had experience with a bunch of different brands. So you can use anyone. Anyone's going to be just as good as any other in that line. Same as with the student lines. As long as you pick something that is, a name brand, you're going to be all right. And you don't have to just choose like a set of colors. You can get a tube from this company, a tube from that company, get different colors, and you can see what you like best. But the differences are very minuscule between the paints. So owning the most expensive paint in the world isn't going to make you a better painter. Use what you have.
Especially if you don't use it, right?
Exactly.
You talk about that a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. Buy it and use it. And then if you're finding that, I really just don't like the shade of ultramarine, it doesn't seem to pop like the tutorials I see on YouTube, then buy a tube of, ultramarine from a company that you have heard, the person that you saw their tutorial use, like Daniel Smith or Windsor & Newton or whatever brand that is that you really like the color of. Just buy that tube, because they all work together. Even Core that has the Aquarelle binder works with all the ones with the gum arabic binders. They're all going to work together.
And you talked about things being people ask if they have a certain amount of money, what's the best thing I can get? But you talked about things being too precious. If you spend too much money on it, then you're just like afraid to use it because you don't want to mess it up. So
exactly. I think one of the reasons I had so much fun with this is because it was cheap, and even if I used it all up in a week of painting, I still got my money's worth. I still got $19 worth of fun out of it, and I didn't have to worry about conserving it because it was so expensive. If I bought this off Instagram and paid $120, I probably wouldn't have touched it yet because I would be saving it for a special occasion. Right. Another thing that I recommend is, like, starting off with a good student grade paint. Say, like, you get the Sommelier set and you use up all of the olive green and you love that color. You can go buy just a tube of that olive green and replace that in the artist grade. Or if you use up the geranium red or the carmine or whatever color that is, buy a tube of artist quality the next time you're going to refill it. And that way you only end up spending the big bucks on the paints you're going to use, rather than buying a full set of something and then not using half of the colors because they're just not the colors that you end up using, that you like, or they're too similar to other colors, so you just never use them, or it's a color you hate, like chrome oxide green, which can't believe they still make that color. It's an awful color. It's terrible. Is that it?
Yeah.
All right.
I hope some people liked hearing that, because I think that would cover things for a lot of people, because they want to know if this particular set is okay and all that. Yeah. And I want to answer them and I don't know how to paint, but just hearing you talk through the years, I would just say, use it. Just go use it. Yeah, it's fine.
I see people using, the $5 paint sets from Michaels and making beautiful stuff. Just, especially if you're doing something, that is a little bit more loose, and especially if you're working on paper that's not watercolor paper, you're actually going to be better off using the cheap paint, because it's going to have all these fillers that keep it from seeping into the paper, and it's going to perform better for you. So that $5 set from Michaels might work loads better than the $500 set from Schminka, because it's meant for using on more porous, lower quality paper. So yeah, just use what you have. I mean, start with a brand you recognize, and then replace each color as you run out with a better quality if you want to, and that way you'll end up having good quality paint and the colors you'll use.
It's like if you were wanting to learn how to play guitar or something. You don't worry about having the best guitar. Mm-hmm. Play it. You learn how to play it. It'll sound cool.
Right. Right. And I mean, there's so many differences in paints you won't even notice. Like if you were to give me 10 different brands of acrylic paint, I'm not going to notice the subtle differences between them because I don't paint in acrylics that often. But, you know, I'll notice the differences between 10 brands of watercolor, but they're so minute that you have to be painting for quite a while to even distinguish these differences. You know, just get a paint and paint with it.
Spend money on great paper or great paint?
Paper.
There.
Honestly, that'll make the biggest difference in the pleasure of the painting, because poor paper that's pilling on you, that can't take lifting or washing without buckling and balling up on you, then that's going to be miserable. Where you can use cheap paint, like there's a brand that I used to use with kids called Reeves, and it was very inexpensive, but if you have a decent paper, it's going to be fine. You know, having bad paper is tough to overcome, but there is some good cheap paper out there, and we might do a paper video if you guys want it. Just I don't think I have as much paper as I do paint, so that's good.
I don't see how you could.
Paper's heavy and it takes up a lot of space.
It's not going to be as visually interesting a video either.
That's true. Yeah, that probably ought to be a PDF file or something.
Oh, you got 420 something people watching.
Oh my goodness. Yay. Wow, that's fantastic. So I didn't link up to all of these different palettes that I used. Depending on where you live, you're going to be able to find some of these cheaper and some of them, you know, will not be accessible to you. So I wanted to kind of show these and give an overview and show the swatches, just so that you could, you know, if you're in Europe and you can't get a certain brand, you can find something that's comparable and you don't feel like you're missing out, because the differences are minute, and I enjoy collecting watercolors.
What's the name of the flip out ones again? Or the brand?
This, I bought it from the company Meeden on Amazon. There are other companies that sell it, and there are companies on Instagram selling it, advertising on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm pretty sure all they're doing is taking your money and ordering it on Amazon and having it shipped to you. So cut out the middleman. Don't pay $60 for this. Pay $19 or less if you want a smaller palette, and that's what I would do. But I did use these in my Sketchbook Sunday this morning, and I linked to the one I bought. I went back to my order and I linked to that one, so you'd be getting it from the same seller if you want this exact one where I bought it from, and it was on Amazon. So I do make a small commission if you order anything through my Amazon influencer page, or you click one of my affiliate links, just to let you know. You're going to get my honest opinion in any event, but just so you know that. What are you laughing at?
Somebody wants you to stay on and count them as you put them away.
Okay. Oh boy.
So if you want to go now, you probably could.
One. I gotta fit them all back in here. Okay, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
This is good stuff.
11, 12, 13, 14, 15,
People say
16.
Yes, they want the paper video.
17, 18.
Usually I would start
19.
saying other numbers to mess her up now, but probably shouldn't.
20, 21 in the student grade one. I'm not going to count this one because that's in my teaching stash, so that's going in another bin.
She's not going to count that one because she has 30 of them.
Yeah, that's just not fair. So it's 21. So keep 21. Remember 21. Okay, I'm going to start again for artist calls. 1. I'm not going to count these peerless ones because I'm not. 2, 3, 4, 5.
I wish
6,
everybody could see
7.
her studio. There's so much stuff, but I could never find like a pencil or
11.
piece of paper to write on,
13. 14.
A roll of tape, say, or
15.
Can I write on this?
16. Yes.
Can I write with this?
Yeah.
Okay.
18, 19. So 19 in the artist grade, 21 in the stow, 20 in the artist grade, and 21 in the student grade.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah. Oh wait, no. Well, I got these 2 big ones too. So that's 2 more in the artist. So that's 22 in the artist grade. Not counting tubes or anything. I didn't count tubes. I think I have, although I did count my tubes when I was sorting them, and I hit over 200 tubes.
Over 200 tubes.
Yeah.
So how many individual pans are there in all
no
these?
idea.
You gotta count them all.
No, I don't want to. I am not a mathematician. I'm an artiste. All right.
I'm sure there's somebody who has more out there.
Oh, yeah. I bet there's people in the chat that have more.
I don't know.
Let me know, people.
Nobody's speaking up about that yet.
Well, that's because they can't fess up.
Nobody said, I have more paints than Lindsay.
They spark joy. It's one thing I'm not a minimalist in.
No.
Is art supplies. All right. Well, I think that does it. If you guys have any questions after the stream, go ahead and pop them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up before you leave. And that's it. Do you have anything to add?
That's it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you guys for stopping in on a Sunday night. I appreciate it. And until next time, happy crafting.